Hi there. So today we're going to go over the different types of forms that there are for HTML, CSS, all that sort of stuff. Um, so forms are extremely useful when making an HTML document because it allows input from the user in a variety of different ways. Those different ways include text type, radio type, checkbox type, submit, and then button. These are each very different and also very unique in that they are each used for different situations. Um, we'll start with the text one. The text type input is primarily used for more customizable inputs from the user. With the added customization that the text type gives you, it allows users to input things like their name, phone number, email address, whatever they might need that might be more specific or information that wouldn't be inherently provided by whoever programmed the website or the page in general. This is very good for customized situations that need like I said, like need names, emails, that sort of thing. Things that can't really be predicted by the person coding, you would want to use uh, text type inputs in order to get that sort of information. Moving on to the second type, the radio type. This I feel like is a more common form of application that, or input application at least, that you see on a lot of different websites. This essentially allows the user to select from a variety of options provided by the programmer. So if the programmer is really looking for a specific input, like they want a certain answer and there's a certain list of options, the radio type is usually the best option to go for when that is presented. So moving on down the list, we're on the input type checkbox, which is actually very similar to the radio type. But the one difference is that you are allowed to select multiple options. So this could be used in a lot of different practical ways. For example, if you were saying like how many states have you been to or what states have you been to, whatever, you could have a list of states, and the person who is doing the checkbox or doing the form, the user, would be able to select multiple different options pertaining to whatever the writer of the form wants to get for information. Now on to the input type submit. This one might seem a little more obvious about like what it actually does. It does exactly what it says. It is the submit button. But this is more interesting in that it will basically process the form, and you can have it process the form in a number of different ways. If you want to get more complicated with it down the line, you can connect it to different servers and have it send that information to somewhere else to have it processed. There's a lot of different things that the submit button can do, but basically at the end of the day, it takes all the information that you put into the form and it processes it in whatever way that you have it set to do so. All right, now on to the input type button, which is a similar input type to submit in essentially the how it looks. Both are buttons, both do different things though. The submit button being, submitting the form for processing. The normal input type button can be used to do a number of things. A common thing that I have done in a lot of the things that I've programmed is creating a clear button that allows basically all the information the user inputted to be cleared. So basically what the button is it allows you to program different functionality into it for whatever you need it to do, basically. So it's very useful and it's a very flexible input type. All right, so we're going to go back up to the input type text and just do a little example of what this looks like when you put it into practice. So what we have here is the HTML code, which is showing this part right here would be the which is reflected right here. It is basically like the I guess the top of the form, and then in the form you're going to have input type text, and what that allows the user to do, like I said earlier, is type. So we'll just do Tyler, and it allows you to type whatever. I mean, you could do anything. You can do string. You could do integers, anything. And then once that's done, you're able to submit that. And when you press whatever button is provided, here there's nothing. But if there's a button, you would press set button. It would process whatever that was here, and it will assign it to whatever the submit button is set to do with that information that's provided by the user. Moving on to another example, this is input type radio. And so here we have the HTML code like before. There's a little bit more because it's a little more complicated for just the amount of code that you're going to be writing compared to the text input type. But here you can see that all of this is reflected over here where you are able to select an option. And the options are obviously provided by whoever programmed it. And then, like before, essentially you're able to select all the options. A single option specifically for radio is a single option. And then once you've had that option selected, whatever you go from there, whether you submit anything, you go from there. But essentially, it allows you to choose something that the that the programmer decides they want as an option to be selected.
Moving on to the checkbox input type, it's very similar to the radio type in that you are selecting options that are predetermined by the programmer. However, the difference with this one being the multiple, the amount of options that you have to select from. So here, you choose your monster's features. You're able to select both or nothing. And this, like I said before, can be used for a bunch of different things. Like the example I made with the states, you can select multiple states, multiple characteristics. It's just used for more than one option. And on to the next input type, we have the submit input type, which, like I said before, is just a simple button. And what this does is it will submit basically anything that you put into the form and send it where it needs to go, respectively, based on what you have set for your submit functionality. And finally, we have the input type button. And this is just it's very simple. It's essentially just a programmable button. Does exactly what you would imagine. Essentially, whatever you want this button to do, it will do. You just have to program the functionality into it. It's similar in sense to the submit button, but it just does different things depending on what you put into it.
Alrighty, and for the last part, I just went ahead and I pre-wrote some code just to demonstrate each thing because I'm a little bit on a time crunch. And so the first one, we have the input type text, just an example there. We go on to input type radio where you select a single option. And then we go on to checkbox where you can select multiple options. And then this is a button example and the submit example. And what this looks like is this. When you get an output, this is the output you get, and you can enter whatever, and you can select whatever, and how many states have you visited. You just go like this, and this is an example of the button, and when you're done, you would submit everything, and it submits the form.